It's the drawing show. It's the drawing show.
Meow. All right, everyone, we are back with another episode of The Drawing Show. My name is Ben Kent, and welcome in. We are getting into it today. I actually have no idea what I'm going to talk about. That's not true. I know exactly what I'm going to talk about. And actually, it's going to be more technical stuff, talking about drawing and process, and kind of go through hopefully some helpful tips, and let's get into it. It's going to be about shading. That's what we're doing. That's part of the process right now for this portrait. Now, a show of hands. Who has a hard time drawing eyes? Who has a hard time rendering eyes? Now, if you didn't raise your hand, you are one of the few, one of the chosen few. I am currently raising my hand because I sometimes, and when I say sometimes, I mean most always, have trouble drawing and rendering eyes. But hopefully, after today, it'll be a little bit easier for all of us. So before I actually, and I'm working on stopping saying actually, so if you hear me say that and you're like, can you please stop saying that? I'm also hearing myself say that, and I'm trying. So let's get into it. If you've seen any of my other videos, you've seen me talk about, or heard rather, me talk about blocking in and the process of blocking in a portrait, or really any drawing. When you're drawing from life or you're drawing from imagination, it's always a good idea to block in what you're drawing. So come at it generally, work at it simply, working with simple shapes, and then getting more and more complex as you go. So start simply, get more and more complex. It is the same thing with shading. We're finding those values. When you look at a portrait, or you look at really anything, you're seeing all kinds of values. And it is easy to get overwhelmed by the amount of values that you see. What you have to do is break down and simplify where you're seeing those values. And when you attack it, when you start, you have got to start simply. And that will be demonstrated here in a little bit as I start going at these eyes. And here we go. We're finding this value. We're going at this first value, just filling in the iris here. The whole thing, one value, simple. The point is, we're kind of finding a base value that's going to get us to a point to build upon. So we're building this up. You can see that I'm not just going straight in, finding that dark pupil and punching that in. We are going to build up to that. So you're starting the foundation of your shaded area and just layering on top of that, getting darker and darker. And so we're starting simply. And as we go, as we add more layers and get darker and darker, we're adding more and more detail because we're putting in the darker areas where they need to go. So once we start, adding in the pupil, that's probably going to be our darkest area. But you also want to be careful of that and not just go straight into as dark as you possibly can, because you know this is going to be the darkest area. Instead of just going as dark as you possibly can in those areas, build up to them. Because as you go, you start to notice that even in those darkest areas, so even in these eyes that don't really have highlights in them, in the pupil, the darkest part of the drawing, in fact, and not just the eye, but the darkest part of the drawing has some variations in it. So it's not just like all completely blacked out. There are some different values even within the darkest part of the eye. So if you can get some of those subtleties in there, it's really going to add something to your drawing, make it a little bit more interesting, make it a little bit more engaging. People can actually get drawn into it a little bit more. It should keep your drawing from looking not just flat dimensionally, but flat as far as something that somebody can look at and engage with. So keep that in mind. I mean, that's just another level of something to think about while you're drawing. So as you can see, I'm building up that pupil. I'm building up the darkest part of the eye. I'm not just going straight in, full pressure, making it as dark as possible. And you can also see there's quite a lot of contrast between the iris and the white of the eye. And I will be addressing that, darkening up areas of the white of the eye, making the play between those two values a little bit closer, not quite so contrasty. Because right now that eye is just kind of popping out at you a little too much. And there needs to be a little bit more of a subtlety. So I think one of the biggest takeaways from this video should be just being observant and paying attention to the relationship between different values. So when let's say you're doing the eye, you're drawing the eye, you're doing what I'm doing here, you're shading, you're getting everything darkened up to the value that you want it to be. And you're just like, something is not right. It doesn't look real. It doesn't look believable. It's kind of making me a little upset because it's just not working out. Just keep going with your values. I mean, beyond the fact that, let's say your position of everything is somewhat correct, your proportions look okay, but after you've done some shading, you've darkened up some areas, and it's just looking wonky and weird, and you're kind of just lost, don't know what's going on, what you're supposed to be doing. Take another look at the relationship between the values. Sometimes all you need to do is just darken up some areas or lighten up some areas. It takes some practice to get to the point where you can see that better. So I would really encourage you to think about it with a lot of intention. So not just kind of like, okay, this is kind of what I'm supposed to be thinking about, and okay, yeah, I'm kind of thinking about it, but like really focus on it and try to figure it out. And it's going to be hard and you might not figure it out. Don't necessarily be okay with not figuring it out, but know that it's going to take some time, and that if you don't figure it out today, you will eventually figure it out if you keep at it with this intention. So keep drawing, keep practicing, doing the shading, working on the relationships between these values, and you will eventually get to a place where it's going to start making a little bit more sense. You're going to start getting a little bit more comfortable with it. As you're drawing today, you might think, dude, there's no way. I'm trying. I've been trying. It's not working. All I will say to that is don't give up. Stay in it. It's going to be frustrating, I know, but just stick with it. There were a couple times a few years ago actually, when I started to want to start drawing a little bit more seriously and get better at my observational drawings and get better at portraits, where I just could not figure it out and it was driving me nuts. And, you know, I always thought of myself as a pretty decent drawer. And I got to this point where I was just like, I can't do this. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out why my drawings were looking super weird, and I could not get them to look the way that I wanted them to. The way that I saw it in my head, I could not transfer onto the paper. And I was getting really frustrated, and I almost gave up. Because, I mean, this isn't my... It's easy to give up. Especially with drawing. This isn't my job. I don't make money off of this. So why not just give up? I could focus on my thousands of other things that I should be focusing on. But I didn't. I kept with it, and I've come a long way. I think there's a lot more I can get to. But this is what I've gotten to so far. So I hope that you guys can stick with it and get to a place where you're happy with what you're doing. So thanks for watching this, listening to this, and hope you guys have a great day. So long, farewell. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.